The river was my sanctuary long before the neighborhood turned into a battleground of egos and clipboards. My name is Nathan Cole, 58, a retired hydrologist who spent 3 decades with the U.S. Geological Survey, mapping fault lines and chasing water through the Rockies. 15 years ago, I bought a small lot along the lower Clearwater River not for a fancy address, but because the river ran clean, its willows dancing in the wind, whispering memories of the wild terrains I'd once studied. That river was alive, steady in summer, untamed in winter, and I'd walk its banks at dawn, coffee mug in hand, reading its silt like a book. The soil, the sedge, the cattle's feet grounded me in ways retirement never could. Willow Creek Estates was quiet back then, a middle-class enclave with tidy lawns and barking dogs. The HOA was just background noise, fussy notes about trash cans or fence heights. I paid my dues, kept my yard neat, and stayed out of the gossip. I wasn't here for neighbors. I was here for the river. Then came Patricia Lang, the new HOA president, elected 2 years ago with a smile that masked ruthless ambition. She had no clue about land management or science, just a vision to elevate the neighborhood for buyers. Her plans? Ornate streetlights, branded benches, even synchronized sprinklers, pure vanity. But the one that hit me like a punch was her riverbank revitalization project, announced in a glossy flyer that screamed in bold red font, Clearwater Path Beautification. It promised trimmed banks, stone walkways, solar lights, and worst of all, controlled sand dredging for a polished look. My blood ran cold. The Clearwater was a living system, its banks shaped by centuries of sediment and roots. Dredging it wasn't cosmetic, it was reckless. No river with its gradient and clay foundation could be carved up without permits, studies, or consequences. Red survey flags sprouted along my property's edge, paint scarring the willows that held the bank against floods. I stormed to my first HOA meeting in years, held in a clubhouse reeking of new paint and arrogance. Patricia stood at the podium, flanked by landscapers and a consultant named Greg Walsh, a contractor whose last job had flooded a neighbor's garage. I asked if they'd done an environmental impact study or contacted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, given the river's protected watershed status. Patricia smirked. "It's just sand, Mr. Cole. We're not building a dam." I cited state regulations. She brushed me off. "We've checked. It's fine. No permits, no proof, just lies." I spent the next week digging through records, not dirt. Old USGS contacts, maps, and a 1993 state hydrological law revealed a ban on sand displacement near homes due to clay shelf risks. I mailed the evidence to the HOA. Silence. Then the trucks arrived, backs, rigs, dump trucks tearing into the bank like vultures. Willows were ripped out, silt scattered, sandbags tossed carelessly. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I walked the river, flashlight in hand, snapping photos of the destruction. The current, once gentle, clawed at the exposed shore. I sent the images to the county, called State Environmental Compliance, and wrote an op-ed warning of erosion and lawsuits. The machines roared back the next day. This wasn't a mistake, it was defiance. Dawn brought tremors, not from quakes, but from an excavator's relentless grinding. From my porch, I saw Greg directing the crew, his vest glowing in the fog. Dump trucks hauled away sand, leaving the clay shelf bare. I grabbed my folder, regulations, surveys, photos, and confronted him. "Who approved this?" I shouted. He grinned. "HOA's call, Cole. Looks cleaner already." I listed violations, riparian buffers, state law, federal waterways. He shrugged. "Patricia handles the legal stuff. I dig." I filmed it, all the missing silt fences, the severed roots, the clay exposed like a wound. I uploaded the footage to the California Water Resources Control Board and called my old colleague, Emily Grant, at the Corps of Engineers. "They're dredging without permits," I said. "It's collapsing." She promised action. If they're in a protected waterway, they're toast. They weren't just dredging, they were hoarding sand for trails and tennis courts, unfiltered and unstable. I marched to Patricia's office, her desk littered with candles and smugness. "You're breaking federal law," I said. "Show me the permits." She leaned back. "They're in process." I snapped. "You don't dredge first and ask later. That's how you ruin us all." Her eyes flickered with fear, but she dismissed me. "File an appeal or leave." I left, Warning, the river doesn't forget. That night, a storm unleashed its fury. Rain lashed, thunder cracked, and the river swelled. By morning, it was a monster, tearing at the stripped banks. The sand they'd stolen had slowed its flow. The willows they'd cut had stopped erosion. Now, nothing held it back. My trail cameras caught the first small collapses downstream, the water slicing like a blade. I filed reports with the county and state, attaching every photo and regulation. At the next HOA meeting, Patricia bragged about removing unsightly debris while I laid out photos of the failing bank. "This is happening now," I said. "Your project is putting homes at risk." She called it fear-mongering. Greg laughed. "Rivers erode, Cole. Get over it." But some neighbors stirred. Lisa, from upstream, asked, "Will it take our yards?" I nodded. "If the bank goes, yes." 3 days later, the river roared back. Lot 47's backyard vanished, its deck dangling over the churning water. The Turner family, woken by their dog, watched 15 feet of their property dissolve. The HOA called it an act of God. I called it gravity. I gave the Turners my evidence photos, logs, reports, and urged them to contact code enforcement. Neighbors' polite nods turned to fear. Patricia went quiet, her newsletter blank. Then she came to my door, her red HOA jacket absurd in the rain. "We need you as a consultant," she said. I laughed, handing her my EPA complaints. The river's already spoken. At 2:43 a.m., another storm hit. A roar shook my house. Lot 45's yard was gone. Fence, roses, deck swallowed. The clubhouse, built on stolen sand, teetered, its back wall collapsing into mud. Alarms screamed. Neighbors fled uphill. Patricia, soaked and shaking, shouted, "What do we do?" I yelled, "Evacuate." Sirens wailed as responders arrived. By dawn, half the riverbank between lots 42 and 48 was gone. The clubhouse was a ruin, its gym flooded, its foundation cracked. Reporters swarmed, drones buzzing. The EPA arrived, led by Dr. Rachel Holt, a hydrologist whose work I'd read. She shook my hand. "This place tells its own story." Her team moved fast drones, radar, samples. My footage of Greg's illegal dredging was the nail in the coffin. Patricia whispered, "I thought he had permits." Ignorance wasn't a defense. The EPA's press conference was scathing. Willow Creek HOA faced charges for Clean Water Act violations, negligence, and habitat destruction. Penalties, criminal referrals, and a remediation order followed. The HOA's assets were frozen, Patricia resigned, and Greg's license was revoked. He fled, rumored to be laying gravel in Yuma. Neighbors formed a legal coalition with my evidence. The HOA was dissolved by a 79% vote, replaced by a transparent firm. The river's restoration began, willows replanted, banks stabilized. I was hired as a technical liaison, ensuring the work honored the land. One evening, a letter arrived, postmarked Sacramento. "You were right." I didn't understand. "Thank you, PL." I filed it with my records, not for pride, but for the river's story. The new trail bloomed with grasses and dogwood, the river flowing naturally again. A brass plate on a new bridge read, "Let the land speak for itself." I walk it now, coffee in hand, listening to the river's steady humid tale of arrogance, collapse, and redemption, carved by the land itself.